Yeah, I got a weird setup today. Stereo Azimuth. We're going to talk about Bifrost 264. So I've been doing a lot of, shit gear, and but it, they make good stuff. Like, what can I say? So I'm gonna do a quick review and rundown all the way from Bifrost to the Bifrost 2, the Bifrost 264. So this is a Bifrost 264 in silver. And then, but before we can talk about this, we have to talk about this. This is the Bifrost or Bifrost 1. So yeah, let's talk about the Bifrost history. Now, I know this was in black, but which they didn't offer until a certain amount of time. But let's just talk about the history of the Bifrost, like where it came from, what they've upgraded to, and why the BF264 is so cool. So the Bifrost started off as a DS or 1-bit DAC, and it had an AK 4396 chip in it. And the original Schiit stack was one of these and an Asgard. That was the original Schiit stack. So as the company grew, though, the whole plans were to have a multi-bit version in this size. It took them a while to get there. They eventually went to, another upgraded AK chip, the AK 4399, I believe, which was a little more, brighter sounding, I guess you would say, but I would say that it was not really bright. It was more kind of lacking in bass. So there's always a difference whether you've got more of something or less of something. So sometimes when something is lacking in bass, some people say that it's got too much treble, and really you just don't have enough bass underneath. But I digress. We'll move on. They eventually got to the multi-bit version, and I've had, my first DAC was a Modi, it was the original Modi, and then I upgraded to the Bifrost, the 4490, which was the next version after the 4399, and the 43 or the 4490. Was fine. It had a lot of details. There was some punchy low end, but it's that velvet sound kind of thing where you have that punchy low end, you have the top highs and not much in the middle. But eventually I did upgrade to the multi-bit version. The multi-bit version used a 16-bit analog devices, chip, where the Gungnir was 18-bit, the Ignis Rail was 20-bit. And to me, the Bifrost was okay, here's your entry level into multi-bit, even though it was $500 or something like that. But it got you that multi-bit kind of sound. To me, I always kind of felt that it was kind of hazy, kind of the low end was it was kind of warm, but it wasn't really that defined. And the top end had a nice kind of sound to it. It wasn't very harsh at all, but it was still kind of hazier kind of sound. It was the 4490 definitely sounded much more cleaner and a little bit sharper. The multi-bit was kind of a little bit foggier sounding, and even the low end wasn't that punchy. So eventually they made this for a while, so it was time to really upgrade. And to really upgrade the Bifrost, really, which was let's take a look right quick so we can see the feature differences. So you only have 3 inputs: USB, light pipe or Toslink, and coax. And on the back is just unbalanced outputs: coax, USB, there's your Toslink, and your power switch. So they did upgrade the USBs. This says Gen 5. They made a Gen 2, made a Gen 5. This is actually a unison, like user serviceable. And the whole idea behind Bifrost was to make it to where, like, as they came up with new, analog or new DACs, they could do it. Like, somebody could basically have purchased a AK-4396 original Bifrost, then bought the card, for 100 or 150 bucks to upgrade to the 4399. Then they could have said, okay, well, now I want to upgrade to multi-bit. Well, to upgrade to multi-bit, you had to send your Bifrost over to Schiit, and then they had to make a firmware upgrade to the board, and then you can get your multi-bit. But you also could have, like, user serviceable, upgraded to the 4490. Like, either one. Like, you could have had all these cards in here and been upgraded. And then the idea was, like, as they come up with a new, like, DAC chip, or, like, and then the same with the USB. They came up with two. They said, okay, here we got a new USB implementation. Here's Gen 5. And then, like, okay, here's a new USB implementation. Here's Unison. And even though mine says Gen 5 USB, I've actually changed mine to Unison. And if you want to see that process on how to do it, I've got a video you can watch on how you can take apart this U chassis thing and upgrade yours. Because you can still go to the Schiit website, buy a Unison board, upgrade your Bifrost. Even if you have an original one with a 4396, you can upgrade. And it basically says here, upgradable DAC. But as we all know, like, the card that they designed was getting too populated, even for what they had. They wanted to upgrade the sound. They wanted to upgrade the sound. And then, so what did they come up with? Well, that's where we get the Bifrost 2. So, Bifrost 2 has, a little bit different features. You have, it's got this hole here for a remote control. Whoa. Which I'll show you the remote in a minute. You have balanced outputs, as well as RCA. You have coax. You have, the same three inputs, but the cards, you don't have to take the whole thing apart. You can just a couple of screws here, and then the stuff pulls right out. Then this right here, user serviceable firmware upgrade. So all you have to do is like a micro SD card, I believe, and there's a certain procedure how you can upgrade the firmware, update the firmware from the user. You download a file, and then there's certain instructions on how to do it, how to get it to get into the firmware update mode. And then another thing that they did with the 264 is that you can upgrade your firmware to like a NOS, or like a non-oversampling mode. So that's a neat little difference, which I'll talk about the sound differences in a second. So, but then when they made this with the AD chip, with the 18-bit AD chip, two of them, it is the same AD chip, or a similar AD chip that they had on the Gungnir, but it was a what's called like a lower class version. So a lot of times when chip manufacturers chips are made, they grade them. So this was very popular with the TDA 1541, like the Philips DAC chips, and they would get like the special ones that would measure great would get like a crown, and then they even got to where there was like a double crown version. And I think Texas Instruments did this with like the K version. So like there's PCM 63, then you have a K version, or PCM 56K. Like, did you get the K version, or PCM 1702K? Because those were the chips that were supposed to measure the best. So that was the Gungnir had the top tier 18-bit analog devices chip in it. The Bifrost, they went to like just the standard version of that chip, not the top tier version. But the cards face in like sideways. They don't fit like directly down in the board. It's like this whole sideboard. They kind of fit in. It's like this L kind of thing. It's kind of weird. But they they try to maximize having this separate sort of board, this DAC board on top of all this other stuff. They also went to like this what I call the waterfall chassis, where it doesn't it's not like the Jotunheim and things like that. So they really try to maximize like the size, and it's really cool. It looks almost the same. It has the same sort of functionality, but it did sound better. And the original, and then they went to the latest version, the 264. We'll just talk about that. Which is what this is they didn't really change anything externally. It was just an internal thing, and it was a change to the TI chip. So it was a Texas Instruments 16-bit chip. It's the same chip they use in the Yggdrasil Less is More, but it's going sort of almost backwards. Instead of like an 18-bit chip, it's actually like a 16-bit chip. But I think they did it for good reason, which I'll talk about. So let's talk about like all the sound quality sort of differences. Original Bifrost, like 4396, kind of hazy kind of sound. Then you get into, like I said, I've already explained the 4399, where it was a little bit bright but not a lot of bass. Then you get into the multi-bit version, which the original, where is it? The original, original multi-bit version, kind of hazy kind of sound. And then you get into the original Bifrost 2, and I thought the original Bifrost 2 was a lot like the Gungnir A2, where it was like having this clarity. It wasn't really this overall big warmth. Everything was pretty even across the spectrum, but I just thought that maybe it was slightly bit hazier than the Gungnir A2, where you weren't getting as much details. But it's like the Gungnir was like, I can't remember the price of that, $16.99 or $12.99, versus like getting the Bifrost 264, which at the time I think was like $6.99. So I was like, wow, for almost like half the price, you're getting almost the same performance. Maybe, maybe 5% less or something like that, or 6%, maybe 10% less or something. But it wasn't really that terrible, and I thought it sounded pretty good. And then you got remote control, you got all that kind of stuff. But then you get into, then they went to the 264 recently. And the 264, to me, the differences between the two of those is that the 264, the TI chip, just sounds not very hazy at all. It has a lot better clarity, I think, and it's, it has a little bit better like low end. Some of the low end on some of the analog devices, especially like on like Bifrost and some of the other, like the multi-bit, the low end sounds to me like the most haziest. Like if I had to pick, if I say hazy, and if I had to pick like an area, of the spectrum where it was most hazy, it was in the lows. It was not a lot of low end definition. It wasn't a lot of punch. It sounded warm, but not real punchy. And I think also the TI chip brings a lot of like a little bit more like layering, because I think that's what I hear like in the sort of the clarity. And then so it has cleaner lows, and then it also has a little bit wider sort of soundstage, and also very dynamic. I just felt like the dynamics were like, where it could like really show off and really go from these like quiet parts to these loud parts, like really easy. Like almost it sounded sort of, I don't know, faster, or, whatever you want to call it. Some people complain that it has a little bit of high peaks. The highs sort of like peak out a little bit too much, maybe in those dynamics. But even if they peak, I don't really find them like that harsh. Like I find that still, the filtering of the digital stuff, like it doesn't really like bother me that much. But cymbals still sound fine, and everything still sounds fine. There's no real like sort of harshness or sort of smearing, like on the high end. Maybe a little bit, but yeah, they do on the BF264. They do stick out. The highs, especially like that, 6 to 8K range, like do stick out a little bit more than the original Bifrost 2. In comparison to the less is more version of the Yggdrasil, which a lot of people are going to complain because they use the same exact like DAC chip, but I think with everything that you're adding to the Yggdrasil, you're getting so much more and so much of a bigger sound, and it brought in so much more details and layering, that it to me is worth the upgrade, because that brought like a more sense of realism than the Bifrost 264. It's like that one has a much, even though they're using the same chip, but it's like everything else is like sort of enhanced a little bit more with the Yggdrasil than with the regular like Bifrost version. You're still getting the same sort of like tonality. You're still getting the same sort of like thing. It's just like they're, you're talking about like a $2,200 DAC versus like an $800 DAC. They're using the same chip, and this is made by the same company, but this is all sort of like op amp driven and all these other things, and the way the less is more version is also like op amp driven, but the way the power section is and the way that the care going into everything in that is and all the all that kind of stuff leads to just even more deeper clarity, and like I said, more deeper layering, and that's from what I remember. But I still like I still think that the Bifrost 264 is an amazing DAC. The fact that you have these and you can like easily just like take them out without taking anything out. The balanced and unbalanced version that you can get without a lot of fuss. There is a little bit of audio differences between these two, but not as much to like really sort of discuss like at length. I think that they did a really good job of switching these out. Well, I goofed. I was watching this video and realized that there's two things that I failed to mention, and I want to cover them now. So this is like an addendum. So before I get to showing the the NOS mode, I wanted to show two things. So I'm going to switch my camera here so you can see. First thing I'm going to show you is the this remote. So move that out of the way. You don't need to see that. This is what the Bifrost remote looks like. I think the Yggdrasil may look the same like the DAX, but basically you have the source, so like it flips between, it's the same on the buttons, but you can actually go forward and back on the remote, which you can't do on the front. The front only has one button, and you cycle through your three inputs, USB, Toslink, and coax. So this one you could go, saying that you go USB to Toslink, you can go then back to Toslink. That is your source. The other is a mute button. The mute you do not get also on the front of the Bifrost, not controllable, but controlled here. So you can actually mute your source. And then you can also, this right here is a polarity flip. So it's not a phase flip. Phase has to do with time. This is a polarity flip. A lot of older DACs will have this. A lot of people may wonder, why do I have a polarity flip button? And some people are very sensitive to that polarity orientation So, I mean, some live recordings and stuff like that, some people say, depending on what it is, how it was recorded, whatever. So, try it out. Try it out on some different recordings. Some recordings you may notice a difference. Some may not. May not hear much of a difference at all. But yes, that will flip the polarity. So one of the things on the front that I wanted to show you, this is the other thing that I was going to show, is that on the front, like I talked about before, this is your button to switch between sources. And then this right here is where it receives the IR for the remote. And then this, you hear, like you see the T, you see the little like, what looks like a top hat. And basically what that is, and I'll hit the button and you'll see it light up. So when I hit it, I can get it to work. Now you see it lit up. That means the polarity is now inverted. Okay. Oops. Sorry. And if I hit it again, polarity now is back to normal. Polarity inverted. So that's one of the other features that you can get on the Bifrost. I know it was on the Thetas. Like I have a Theta DAC, and it was on like a little toggle switch. Of course, to switch the source was also on a toggle switch. So, and there was a little indicator light to tell you whether you were, like sort of 0 or 180 degrees out of polarity, not out of phase, out of polarity. So that wanted to make sure that was there. It's all outlined in the manual. If you read the manual, you can look at the manual online and go to the Schiit website and read about it. But I just thought I would mention it on this video since it's another feature that is, on the Bifrost that is, of course, not on on the Bifrost too, that is not on the Bifrost. Just want to make that clear. So let's talk a minute about NOS mode. Okay, so if you have an original Bifrost 2, any version, 264, whatever, you can, if you haven't already, you can upgrade your firmware to allow for NOS or non-oversampling mode. And what this will do is it will take off oversampling, because I think that these like oversample like 8 times or something like that, like 8x oversampling, but this will take that off, no oversampling, and then take off the filter, like whatever the DSP filter. So to do that, once you follow the instructions for changing out your, upgrading with the SD card, okay, you can go to Schiit downloads section and, follow the directions to the T of upgrading, firmware, download the file, do everything correctly. Then once you do it, to get into NOS mode, you hold this down, and then it will blink a few times, and then you'll be in like NOS mode, and it will slowly flash on you to get it onto the mode. All right, so now we're going to show you how to get into NOS mode. I booted it up, and it's easier to show you on here, and the camera kind of gets the other two holes. Only the toss link or the light pipe is lit up, but you can kind of see the light kind of leaking in from the other two. That's what the camera picks up. Now, when I look at it with my eyes, I can't really see it that much, but that'll give you an idea. Like if you look at the two other holes, you'll kind of see better indication of like the dimming effect or the flashing of the dimming effect. So all you do is you hold down the button for 10 seconds and then let off. And when you hold it down, the light is still going to stay solid. But once I let off, it's going to go into this like slow sort of like flashing dimming mode. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now I'm going to let off. And now you see it kind of went off for a second and then kind of slowly dim back on. And you'll see it's fading in and out. And that is the NOS mode. That's how I know that it's in the NOS mode. Well, like I said, when I look at it with my eyeball, I can tell that the center toslink light is lit up and it's dimming. But the effect you can kind of see more on camera from the two side like lights or whatever. So that gives me the NOS mode. And to get it back, you just do the same thing. Hold it in for 10 seconds and then it will stay solid. So I'm going to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now it should be back. It'll flash, and now it's like it's going to stay solid, and it's not going to. Now I'm back in oversampling mode. So there you go. That's how you change it from oversampling, non-oversampling. Like I said, some people might find. Let me turn off the light here. Some people might find they like it more than the oversampling. So, experiment yourself, have some fun, and, report back. Let me know in the comments, what you think of it. So thank you all. Like and subscribe. Still trying to get to that, monetized level on YouTube so I can get up to 1,000 subscribers. So please help me get up to 1,000 subscribers. Really appreciate it. You guys take care. I'm Stereo Azimuth. We'll talk to you guys later.